Teaching during the COVID emergency is a different experience for everybody. Part of a class might be in a regular classroom, or as we're going to see here, in a band rehearsal room, and the rest of the students dialing in remotely from home or elsewhere. For a high school band, there's a level of communication that's needed beyond the usual back and forth between a teacher and the students. So we checked in with the Burr and Burton Academy music department to get an idea of how it was going. Neil Freeburn, the chairman of the school's creative arts department, walked us through how they were adapting to hybrid learning in the year of COVID-19.
Yeah, the school decided to do what's called a hybrid format. And the hybrid format basically split the school by the alphabet. And so some kids come on Monday and Wednesday, other kids come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you take like a large ensemble or a large class, you're basically cutting it in half by the alphabet. So on a typical day where I might have an orchestra, half of my kids are actually home and the other half are here. The challenge came is that my groups were really large, and so we actually couldn't fit into this room because we could only get about 20 people in this safely. And even that's kind of pushing it. We tried to find a way to put the students that play wind instruments in separate spaces. And so we're actually working on trying to develop some systems at the school to create like an audio network so kids can hear each other and play together at the same time. When the students are actually at home, teaching an ensemble or a class synchronously, where the students are doing exactly what is happening in the classroom, works in certain subjects where maybe it's more teacher-centered in some regards, or there's a lot of dialogue that might happen. When you have a course where you need to use equipment, that becomes very problematic. And so the students at home might be watching somebody playing the timpani, and that's not very educational because they need to be playing those instruments themselves. And so what we've basically done is shifted our curriculum to have kind of a remote curriculum that's happening at the same time as what's happening in the classroom. And I have some assistants that are actually helping monitor some of the remote work, which is working pretty well right now. One of the things that's really interesting is like, we're not worrying about public performance right now. We're really just trying to have students become engaged in music. We're studying a lot about how to get into the zone or flow. So we've been studying that a lot and trying to find ways to just find joy making music.
So this may be a little flashback for some of you. Try this first one, major or minor, happy or sad.
Those of you that are actually home, I want you to play along too and follow the same plan. We're going to do that for a little bit of time just to get our face going. It's going to train your ears at the same time. And then we have a couple other things that we're actually going to do, talk a little bit about meter, and then we're going to create a unique little jam session after Julie.
We don't have the hook as an ensemble of like, we're going to prepare for a performance. So what are we actually doing for our musical experience? It has to be about what's happening like right now. G minor. There you go.
And most of the students have come through programs where they put a piece of music in front of you and you need to have other people around you to actually make music. We're really trying to break that into something different. If I'm a guitar player, I can sit down and jam at a campfire, but if I play clarinet, it might become the kindling for the fire, It's not as easy to do that. So how can you get a clarinet player to sit down with a saxophone and just kind of make music without having sheet music? So we've really started working on improvisation and composition and looking at other ways to actually make music that are a little bit more contemporary, if you will. And as a result of that, some kids are like really thriving because they're being able to express themselves without having to be like held back by the notes on the page. And then what we'll start to do over time is reintroduce the notes and then start to get them to transcribe what they're playing and inventing and composing. So I think in some regards, it's almost more educational in some regards than it might be if they were just in a traditional ensemble. And that might be a controversial statement to some degree, but it's really allowing us to approach like teaching a scale from a whole different perspective. It's not like we're just doing scales for warm-ups and then playing music. It's like the scale creates the chords and there's a relationship of the two. And we actually have the time to talk about that stuff, which is really, really kind of it's enjoyable as a teacher to look at it from a different perspective.
You hear me, David?
Caitlin Cherry is one of the students in the school's music program.
Yes.
She plays both violin and trumpet.
Okay.
She told us about what it was like from the student's perspective.
Well, being at home, remote band is like really awkward because you're watching the people in the room being all together, and then you're just sitting there muted, but you're still playing along in your own room. So it's not really a big deal, but it still is kind of awkward just watching everyone else do the different things than you. But that's fine. And then when you're in the classroom, it's really nice. It kind of brings back something normal to my usual schedule. Even though we may be like split apart, we're still collectively together. Yes, I mean, since you're not there and your sound isn't like completely blocked by other people, by being at home you can really listen to yourself and kind of tune in with the others, which is really nice, especially if you want that growth. And also, it's still nice being able to hear everyone. When we first went into quarantine, we would just log in, check in, record our parts separately, and then log out. Like, we weren't seeing each other play. It was just through recordings. So either way, like visually and skillfully, we have grown.
Watching yourself, or you can listen to yourself watching the score, and then you're like, oh, this is what's happening.
I've found that in some of the remote sessions I've had with students, the one-on-one work has been great. I've had some really great connections with students on the screen. When we're at school, it's remarkable. You might say it's better to be at school, but when you only see that all day long, there's kids in my ensemble that I would not recognize on the street, honestly, because they're new to me and I see them once a week, basically. My trick is to get them on the screen when they're at home so I can see their face and get to know them a little bit better. So the remote part isn't as bad as people make it out to be. And in some ways, if you're prepared as a teacher, you can give the work that they need to have at home that can be much more self-directed. And in reality, if we think about learning after school, how do you go about figuring out anything? You don't always have a teacher in the room, right? So really what we're trying to do is teach kids how to learn and what resources are going to make that possible, and how do you self-regulate so you do the work in a timely manner. That stuff is huge. And those are skills that I think are going to last a lifetime. So there is a lot of upside to this. From a teacher's perspective, it's like quadruple the amount of work that we've ever done. And if you've been teaching for many years, you find that you rely on the tricks that you've developed for so many years. And you have certain projects or whatever that just work. Well, in this world, it's totally different. You have to try things very differently and explore new opportunities. And that, for somebody who's been teaching a long time, is kind of thrilling to change it up. So I see a lot of this as a lot of work, but it's still a lot of fun, too, to be an educator during these times.
Some kind of live concert performance might happen much later this school year, or it might not. But even under these unusual and unprecedented circumstances, ways are being found to push learning forward. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.